I said to them, if I could be involved, if I could have a say, if I could take part in the making of the movie, then I could stand up and pretend to be James Bond.
He is my favorite iteration of Bond, and I think it's because of the complexity he's brought to the character.
I think, for my money, the film is a farewell to Daniel's Bond and the relationships Daniel's Bond has had with others.
I feel that this one will be very, very special.
I've spent the last 16 years of my life playing James Bond, and that seems impossible to kind of imagine now, because it only feels like yesterday that I started it. It's been phenomenal. It's been such an incredible experience on a professional level, on a personal level, and all of those things. Just to have had the privilege to sort of be part of the Bond universe and to play James Bond. I still don't quite believe I'm James Bond today, which is kind of, I suppose it goes to show it's such seems sort of beyond my imagination.
For me, the James Bond films are very iconic also because they are very chic. There is something about the style, the British style, that we all love. And so yeah, we think about the cars, we think about the beautiful locations, the suits, the gadgets, of course beautiful women, beautiful men. And yeah, there is, it's very, it makes us dream.
I think Daniel is one of the best James Bonds ever. Obviously, he has the sophistication and the strength and the attitude and the talent, but I think personally something that makes him stand out more and makes the character more special is, and maybe people don't perceive him that way, it's how funny Daniel is. And he has this sense of humor and this charisma that makes him create a character that's very relatable and real. And I admire Daniel very, very much.
Working with him over these months have been enlightening, just to see his process, to see how he works. He works in a little bit of a theatrical way. I'm from a theatre background, we both are actually. So to see how he prepares, to see just how much detail goes into these scenes, just how much detail goes into Bond. And I've first-hand witnessed how he's come up with the Bond that he's come up with. It makes complete sense. His approach is bang on. He works with everyone great. He comes up with ideas on the fly. He inspires me when we're in a scene. Sometimes I have to kind of like make sure I'm not watching Daniel, make sure Naomie is watching Bond. And it's been great, and it's really sad, actually, really, really sad. Today, literally, as we're filming this, is the last day, and it feels like the end of an era, but at the same time, it feels like an exciting moment for him because he's really, really done British cinema proud.
Well, Daniel brings an incredible intelligence to the part. He's he's highly aware of the script evolvement, the story he's part of. He doesn't just turn up and play the part, which he does very well. He's very engaged with what the thing is, what the film is as a creation. And I think I get the sense that whatever his input is, it's pretty smart. Look, I've said it all before. It's been said many times. You know, Daniel's very convincing as a real He has a physical toughness, he's persuasive in the physicality of the part. He's a man you believe has been in the front line of all kinds of tough physical circumstances. That's always been the case. But he brings, he has a lovely humour, gentle humour, wit, and he's got a great spectrum of nuances as Bond. But I know I've said all this. I mean, I'm a fan of Daniel's Bond.
Well, I just think he's a brilliant actor who's brought himself to this character. I mean, that's all you can really hope for. And he's just made, I think, an indelible stamp upon it. And it's got a lot of Daniel in it, you know. And it's a very, very different incarnation of the character to the ones that preceded it. And whoever comes next will have the freedom to do the same thing. And I think that's another thing that sort of makes the series remain fresh and alive and makes people still want to come and see it, is that this character can kind of morph and encompass new qualities and characteristics. But I think Daniel's been really remarkable in bringing it into the 21st century and really central and very clever actually in the way he's done that. Whilst obviously all the time being very aware of the extraordinary history of it and how to kind of always acknowledge those things that people want from a Bond film.
He is my favorite iteration of Bond, and I think it's because of the complexity he's brought to the character and the vulnerability and the sort of the brutal sort of potential for violence. I think it's an interesting combination there. And to be able to take those skills and apply them now now he has wisdom, right? He has all this experience he's brought in over the last 15 years of doing these films, not only on the filmmaking side, but also on the character side. And there's a lot to play with there in terms of how interesting and how multifaceted of a character he is now.
We can look forward to his wit returning. I actually love when Daniel does these really sensitive scenes. I love when he's in love, and you know, he's so brilliant at managing to do that. I think he's fantastic the way that he manages to, you know, portray these simmering deep emotions that are going on underneath, and then actually, you know, he's being stoic and strong on top of that. But you always know you're able to see beneath the surface and see what's really simmering beneath. And I think he does that brilliantly. So you've got a lot more of that.
So I watched him, you know, from the beginning of that journey, you know, till this, these last steps here, and it's been really wonderful to see his evolution through that, to see him, you know, take on, you know, not only the expectations and all the logistical challenges and, you know, the hard work of, you know, this sequence of films, but also having started, you know, at the beginning with him and watched him now. I missed a couple in between, but to see him grow into the responsibility and to see him become this leader, when at the start, you know, I think naturally, as with anyone, there was a bit of uncertainty, you know, with him. So that's been really gratifying. That's been really a pleasure to look at him, you know, having been away, as I said, for a couple of films, and go, oh, look at this guy, you know, he is, you know, he's captaining this thing now, and that's really cool to see. And he's also, you know, beyond that, you know, Daniel's, you know, an incredible, you know, he's an actor who's always in the moment, very intense, of course, you know, bringing his, you know, his signature style and characteristics to this character, but at the same time, both on and off the camera, just an incredibly, generous, generous presence.
I think he looks and sounds better than ever, and it's something to do with maturity, I suppose. He's grown into that part. It's become his own, and he's made it. I mean, this is a chapter we're coming to the end of, but this particular chapter, I look back at the first one of those films, and no disrespect to him, but I also look younger, but he looks younger. But now he looks like a sort of super weathered, integral Bond, and this is his chapter. And almost like it is probably a very good time an appropriate and good time to say goodbye. And but his performances in this film are superb, so he's given us everything, he's given us every last ounce. In fact, he injured himself in trying to do it, it's
Daniel, I mean, he's everywhere. I mean, he's working on the script. He's have an eye on, on set, on the stunt, on everything. He wants to have his vision, not just because he's passionate. He wants to give the maximum to the audience for his public. He doesn't want the audience to be disappointed. So that's why he's very hard with himself. And I have to say he's done an amazing job. And I don't know where his energy comes from to do all of that, because he also has just the lead character to take care of.
For me, Daniel is the best James Bond ever, because on one hand, he's professionally calm, and on the other hand, he is very rough, violent, and still has humor. And he is always at 200%. It was a big experience to work with him, and especially to fight him.
He comes in with a lot of weight. I think it's his, fifth or sixth Bond. So, he is the source to go to. He knows everything. He's been through it all. So he's a powerhouse in that sense, I think. And he comes in with a lot of authority. And he was, I found him very appreciative of what I've been doing and supporting. But then the majority of our scenes have been mainly physical scenes of running or jumping, dodging. So he has been putting up with me screaming quite a bit and jumping around and falling over.
He got off to a flyer with Casino Royale, and hopefully, each film has strengthened his relationship with the role, as well as created new relationships with other characters, which over the time have strengthened and deepened as well. He's got a fantastic sense of humour. He's obviously, he's not bad looking, and he's also just an incredibly deft and gifted actor. And it's a fairly strong package he brings to the franchise, and I wouldn't necessarily like to be the person who follows him.
I look up to Jeffrey Wright so much, and Daniel, of course, too. Daniel Craig. It was, it's that moment where you freak out that you're in a position where you never thought you would be. I remember doing the scene in Jamaica, with them, Jeffrey and Daniel, and I was saying my lines, and I was like, I feel like I sound as though English is my seventh language. You're so nervous and you can't figure it all out. It's one of those pinch me moments. These actors I've admired for so long.
This is the greatest film franchise in the history of cinema. And what Daniel has done in this last chapter, or latest chapter of the franchise, is to breathe contemporary life into it and to make it his own in a way that's pretty rare and pretty extraordinary for a guy to come in with the pressure that was on him when he entered into the space to really stamp a pretty strong signature on this mammoth enterprise that is the Bond series. And so that we're here, the home of Bond, the birthplace of Bond, where Ian Fleming wrote it in the books, is it feels right. It feels earned. And the point for us now is just to do it all justice. But I think as I've been looking at it, doing this latest chapter. And I think always there's a tendency in working on these to be enormously respectful of what's come before, to pay homage where appropriate, but also to create it in the present at the same time.
Bond movies are meant to be seen in the cinema. All movies are meant to be seen in the cinema. They're just, they're made to be seen 30 foot across. We've had a pandemic. It's, we have to put things into perspective about what's been important in the world. But I think that coming together and celebrating cinema in this way is important for us all to socialize a bit more, to get out there and to be kind of having a few more collective experiences. It's nice to sit at home and watch a movie on the TV with a family at home, but there's nothing quite beats sitting in the dark with 200 strangers eating popcorn and a big drink.
For me, it was essential to get the characters right. So that was the first step. Really dig into Bond. Where is he? What's it like being retired for 5 years? What does it feel like having seen all he's seen, all the trauma, everything, and to sit with that unprocessed in a sort of retired bubble, right? And then be drawn back in the world and let him use those tools that he's so good at again to save the world. And then who are all the people that surrounding him? Who are the people who are going to affect that journey?
This film is going to be a very unique, emotional journey for the character of Bond. I think we're going to take this character into places where we have not yet seen him go, and I think the way that Daniel in particular can play this character, it will be really amazing to see how he pulls it off and to watch this arc that we are making for him in this film. So I think we're all very excited to see how that shapes.
Definitely the Bond of No Time to Die is not the same of Casino Royale. He's not the same guy. But it makes sense because that guy is 15 years older. So we grew up with him, he grew up with us, and his character grew up, and it makes sense. He can be exactly the same guy. And that's what is interesting now. I mean, the charisma he has in this one is just very special.
I think, for my money, the film is a farewell to Daniel's Bond and the relationships Daniel's Bond has had with others. I think the plot is strong, but I think it's more psychological, possibly. I mean, Madeleine's backstory is sort of childhood trauma. So that the spectre of it all and the chemical weapons of it all and that's the functioning engine, but I think that the real richness is in the relationships.
This film feels quite, a summary of those that have gone before and the ones that I've been involved in. And that sense of tying up loose ends, that sense of family in many ways, that the family of MI6, I mean, obviously from me, because that's what I'm most involved with. And the sense of loyalty and what loyalty requires of you, and what it can do to your own life, your own personal life, as well as working life, and I guess that sense of, as we're confronted daily with a more febrile world in which we all live in, how to keep on top of that and to maintain a degree of semblance of stability, at least outwardly, for the rest of the population, and when all amongst all those who are in charge are themselves furiously peddling to maintain as calm as possible.
I think when you come to see a Bond movie, you're not coming to watch a drama. You're not going to stand a drama. You want to see something that's visually alert and exciting and interesting. So even a Scandinavian house, we poured over the way to make that look good and plan the shots, how the walls break apart so Linus can shoot in it. So, we're looking for a grand aesthetic and, together with all the departments, there's some amazing people involved in making these films. Yeah? So people at the top of the just very inventive and extraordinary. And so I've had an absolutely amazing experience making this. I can't deny it's been tough, time restraints and things have been tough. But I think the thing we've not let go of that challenging for a grand aesthetic that would be appropriate for a Bond movie.
No Time to Die is about love, betrayal, the past, and legacy.
I think the things you see in this Bond film, which people expect but are also very excited to see, are the cars, what the cars do, the gadgets, what's Q going to give him to save the world this time, what are the things we've never seen before, what are the impossible situations that he somehow finds his way out of.
Yeah, I think for me, on this film, I mean, No Time to Die, hopefully we're going to touch on all of the favourite things about Bond, which for me has been great to see some gadgets come back, and they're fun, and they're not there just for the sake of being there. The action, again, doing as much as we can practically and applying logic to it and seeing Bond do things that Bond would do is really important.
The franchise has built up and got, I think, and evolved a brilliant balance between action, a hero. It's bedded into a sort of reality from which it departs, with fantastical villains and bizarre, brilliant locations. And I think audiences who like the Bond go for that kick, go for that high. They go for really persuasive, charismatic male figure that women like, men like, and that's where there's a humour, there's complication, there's physical prowess, there's charm, there's a sort of a mix, a package that we know works, and that comes with, and there's a sort of shape which I think fans want. They like the pre-credit sequence, they like the bit of serious plot stuff, they like the other characters, they love Q, they love Moneypenny, hopefully they like M. But they like the juiciness of a villain, and so there's a set of boxes that are ticked, which the fan base expects and wants. But I think what they like to see is those boxes challenged and are evolving.
I wanted to add a few new things to it because we obviously saw the guns working in Skyfall, and then the car itself gets destroyed. Spectre gets rebuilt, but we don't know what's inside it at the end of Spectre. We just know they're heading off into the sunset with it. So we kind of had carte blanche to sort of reimagine what's in the car and what it could do, and to try to do it tastefully. Obviously, we wanted it to fit within the narrative and the emotional story we're telling at the beginning of the film, and not feel like suddenly we're veering into sci-fi gadget world, but also have a little bit of fun with it too. So there's a few new surprises in there.
Well, it's an enormous machine. It's a huge logistical endeavor to put this film together, to put any of these films together. You have the scale of the production, but as well, of course, you have the scale of the history behind it and expectations that come with it. So you would think that there is enormous pressure and there is a sense of expectation. But what I've loved about working on these films from the start is, even though we have, this Leviathan that, we're trying to build together, we do it with a sense of family. And there's, as I've described it, it's almost like a massive, enormously budgeted independent film in terms of the spirit and the energy that everyone brings to the table in working on these things. It's been a lovely gift in my career to be a part of this, and so I was only pleased to come back and rejoin the fun.
There's a sensitivity, there's a grown-up sensitivity to this film, which I think is really good, and the film starts off from sort of a place of tragedy, and it doesn't start off with a fun chase. It starts in a much darker place, and give me dark, I'm happy. It inspires.
I think the audience will be surprised, and mostly because of the love story. And then there are like few elements that I don't think I'm allowed to say, that are very new for a James Bond film. So I feel that this one will be very, very special.
She's relatable, and she's real, and she's flawed, and I think very approachable, and I think people's gonna like her, women are gonna like her. There's something about her that is almost like this simplicity and this normalcy in the way she carries herself, and the relationship with Bond, that it's playful, but then at the same time she's very serious, and all she cares about is the job, is the biggest job she's ever had. So all her attention is about that, and she just wants to get it right.
Naomie is a little bit of a teacher's pet in regards to M. She likes to get it right. She likes to do things by the book. She likes to be patted on the back when she's got it right. She likes to be the example in MI6 and to be looked at. She likes the attention. She's slightly cocky. She is very honest, very straight up, a little bit awkward in places. There's really nice scenes of her just saying things at the wrong time, or just being overly confident and people not really quite knowing how to react to her, which I think is quite nice. And just as probably one of the only few women, and also women of colour in MI6 and in the 00 programme, she just holds her own, and she just doesn't feel any way to be big and bold with all of her decisions.
I've always had this thing, you know, we have to just get the best for the film, and with Lashana and Anna, we certainly trumped there. Anna's not really in the movie enough, but what she does is so impactful. Everybody who sees the movie thinks she's brilliant, and she is. And Lashana has come in and taken on this role of Naomie, and it was a joy working with her, because she's just a consummate professional, but also she's just fun, and we got a rapport going, and I hope the kind of relationship in the movie is as entertaining to watch as it was to act in.
Lashana's really strong, lovely quality, lovely energy. And from the moments I shared with her, I think she would be exciting.
It was such a pleasure to work with Lashana, because she's always smiling, she's always in good mood, she's so happy to come to the stunt world, she's very excited to learn something new every day. So, you know, it was really easy for the stunt boys and Patrick, when you have someone like her coming every day, like, I want to learn. You know, she wanted to look good on the screen, and she's done everything to success, and do that at the end. You know, she worked hard because she's someone who wants to be precise in what she do. And there is no place for hazard, and she wanted to do her stuff. So I said, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, everything which was safe enough, she's done it. And she's done a lot. In terms of fight, she's been on wire, she's done a part of the jump. I mean, she's done a lot, and always with a smile. All the stunt department loved her, because she was, again, very respectful, and we saw her, how fast she become, you know, comfortable with weapon and fighting and kicking and punch and all of that. It's like, really, she worked hard, but I think it's worth it, because you can see on the screen it's her.
Lashana, Naomie in our film, again, I'm so lucky. All the actors were so collaborative, and Lashana's, I think we ended up having something like 27 fittings with her, and, you know, more often than not, half of the fitting was just spent gabbing away about how we could approach the character, and then the other half was the technical part of the fitting. Lashana is so up for, like, whatever you want to suggest. She's so willing to try things. She's so open, but she's also, having said that, she's also very, very secure and self-possessed, and very aware of what she doesn't want.
Oh, she brought a lot of good humor, and she's been a very good colleague. We've been dealing a lot with each other. I think we're today striking the 4th week on that cubit balcony. In the film, it's going to be, 30 seconds or 1 minute, and we're on the 4th week of night shoots. So I've been hanging out quite a bit with Lashana, and she's a very good colleague, I'd say, a good sport, and she's just, she's kick-ass.
So as soon as Lashana started with us, every day, straight into we used to call it Shed 32, which was where we had our fight training, we had our gym, and a lot of the guys, we'd go in there and concept a lot of the action. Olivier and me would sit down and just, throwing notes around everywhere, and then Lashana would be training in the corner. So you pop in and always keep an eye on what she was doing, working non-stop the whole time. If she wasn't stretching or conditioning, she'd have a pistol in her hand, or she'd have a rifle, and constantly just working on all the things that we knew that were going to be coming her way. So again, putting her in a harness, getting her comfortable at height and wire work, absolutely, again, brilliant, and loved every minute of it. Was, bouncing through the door every morning. Let's go, what are we doing? Where's my gun? That is what you need when you're working, as a lead on a Bond film, especially when her character is going to have such a physical role. She was, absolutely brilliant.
Being on set with Ray for the first time, I literally remember thinking, you really match this room. You match the Chesterfield sofas and you match the colour on the walls. Everything is just so grand and classy. He brings such an elevation to every single scene. He lifts it with an air of grace, and he is just like a proper gentleman.
Moneypenny is basically, she trusts Bond completely, more than anyone, I would say. And so she is willing to be his eyes and ears within MI6 and provide him with the information that he needs. I think, her heart's in the right place ultimately.
Moneypenny feels like this kind of amazing sort of centre. There's this beautiful, powerful, quite still centre around which other people, in Q included, get sort of more panicked or more stressed, but she's always very still and clear, and always sees very quickly what's going on, what needs to be addressed, and I really like that. I think that's also quite a lot of Naomie, and it's another nice thing that more of us as people gets kind of poured into these characters, which I think is lovely.
Léa Seydoux is also an amazing actress, and an actress that I've wanted to work with for a while. I think she's incredibly fascinating to watch on screen. The internal life is really strong. And so in this film, I wanted to give that a chance to breathe. I wanted to see her in all her layers, be firing at once. And part of that was bringing in some of her backstory, bringing in a sense of understanding, for the audience at least, of who she is and why she's become that person. And then by understanding that, understanding why, then getting it, why she's the right person for Bond, why West Berlin wasn't maybe the right person for Bond, even though there was that great love story there. But she is the yin to his yang. And the potential there, because of her backstory, it's almost like if you just drew from all the little snippets you had from Mr. White in the earlier films to what Madeleine said in Spectre, there was a lot to play with to bring to the screen again and bring to life some of the stories we've heard, and then glimpse all, deeper truths, things that we didn't actually hear in those stories that are seeds to the ultimate danger in the film.
Léa goes through a lot in this movie, probably more than any Bond girls has ever had to face. Léa has an incredible depth, and she brought so many emotion, especially in this character, Madeleine. Yeah, she really brought something.
What I enjoy about the dynamic between Q and Bond is that they're sort of polar opposites. But I feel there's this kind of mutual respect, curiosity about the other, you know, because they're so different. And there's a kind of there's a special kind of longing or curiosity about the thing that's so different that you recognize in the other person. I suppose, to put it sort of crudely, they're kind of brains and brawn, although it's not quite that clear cut. But yeah, there's and it's sort of playful, and you know, Bond tests Q's patience frequently, but there's affection and concern, you know, genuine concern there. I mean, I think the film begins with all of us at MI6 not really expecting Bond to appear at all. We think he's gone and is retired. So everything that unfolds is very unexpected for all of us.
I love Ben. He's, again, an incredible actor, and he does such a brilliant job with Q. I love the way that he is so geeky, and he adds this incredible sense of humour as well. He's just totally believable as Q and fantastic. So no movie is the same without you. You have to have Q, basically, and his gadgets.
You know, Felix has always been, even in the last two films, he was there in the shadows. We had some mention of him in the last, but he's back, trying to coax Bond back into the life. I think he's gotten to a point, it seems, where there are very few that he can trust anymore. And certainly when it comes to this job, in that he needs someone who doesn't hold a U.S. passport, there's really only one man that he'll look for, and ultimately he finds him, and that's our guy, Mr. Bond.
Primo is an action guy, a kind of war dog, and in the end, a mercenary just looking for a reason to fight. He was born and raised on the dark side, so he is a baddie by loyalty.
I liked the idea of a villain who, when they look at themselves in the mirror, doesn't see them as a villain, doesn't see themselves as a villain, they see themselves as a savior, as someone who could lead humanity into its next phase. And I thought Rami, with all his complexity and his intelligence, and you can see that intelligence in his face, in his eyes, and the way he thinks, you know, it's there. And he was the perfect person to sort of take those ideas for that character and run with it. So those were our initial conversations, and we had a sort of dialogue going back and forth, and as the character sort of came to be what it was, he was a part of that the whole way. I'm very excited with it.
I went through all the catalog of Bond villains because they've become iconic and they're parodied even. And there's a sort of through line with all of them that I definitely wanted to pay homage to.
I think he, again, with Rami's character, Logan drinks the Kool-Aid and becomes part of the cult that Rami's taking on the New World Order, in a sense. He follows the vision of that character and wants to fulfill it and be a part of something great that makes the world different. I don't think he thinks he's the bad guy. I think he, is doing the right thing in his head.
I think these guys live carefully on the fringes of what is acceptable. But I think the most important thing, and we've gone back and kind of looked at some scene particularly that we shot early on, and kind of relayered it with this sense of familiarity and this sense of Felix's bond with Bond. And I think more so than the politics of who they are and what they do, and the disparate places that they come from, I think the exploration is really about that. It's about this this love for one another, this respect for one another, and also I think, you know, a love, you know, for the game.
He's more deeply in love, I think, in this film than he has been in any of the others. He's more deeply challenged by the next generation, more deeply challenged by the idea of returning to work, and what, I guess, that question of when you've been so used to providing such service and such dedication, when you decide no longer to give that of yourself, what does your life actually amount to if you're just on a beach enjoying yourself? And that's that sense that I guess all people in service have been confronted with when in retirement, of what do I do now? And for Bond, for some people that's moving on to different things. For Bond, not only because of what's happened in his personal life and the challenges that have been presented to him in this film, but for him it's actually he can't give it up. And I think you see that right through to the end, that sense that for all his desire for a life away from the field or away from conflict, ultimately his life has been one of sacrifice.
Billy Magnussen plays Ash, and Felix has been partnered with Ash, who is really, kind of mixed up in the political appointee side of the business. Felix is obviously, a long time professional. And so they're partnered, this kind of odd couple, and, sent out into the field. And they pursue Bond. As well, Ash has heard, stories of Bond, and, doubtless is equally excited to meet up with him for various reasons, which we discover as we head down the road. But it's an awkward relationship. But Felix is one who's used to having to deal with with what's thrust upon him, and do his job. And so they find themselves in Port Antonio, in Jamaica, and they pursue Bond. They catch up with him, and we go from there.
In Quantum of Solace, I think there was a bit more frostiness or a mistrust between the two of them. And I think Tanner was slightly, if not outraged, then certainly annoyed by the way that Bond always seemed to overstep the mark or play by his own rules, as someone who was in full possession of the rules, in both knowledge and obeisance of them. I think Tanner, and he and Bond rubbed up against each other slightly spikily in the first one. But ever since they've sort of come to know each other's working practices as well as personalities, there's definitely grown a fondness. And I think Tanner is pleased when Bond decides to return to the fold, not only because he thinks he's a good agent, has still got something to offer, but it also creates another sense of continuity and stability, which I think Tanner quite enjoys.
I think it's absolutely brilliant that the women in this movie play such a central role. They're so important to driving, the story forward. They are badass and fully involved in the action. They are not damsels in distresses at all that need to be rescued by anyone. They are formidable, strong, powerful, confident, capable women, and I love that image being projected.
The women that you see in this movie will very clearly reflect the kind of women that are in the world today. You see different levels and facets of strength, whether that's someone being in charge of themselves, working it out, not being so confident, having to work it out, having to code switch at work, being a woman in the workplace. All of those things are things that we don't always get to represent, And it's nice that to top that off, the women are all themselves authentically in their own right, and they're not being picketed against or with each other at all. They're just being themselves and being badasses at that.
Cary has brought a unique sense of style to the film. He's very different from the other directors we've had before, and I was really keen for someone different to come on so that the look and feel of the movie would be unique. But he's also, first and foremost, a Bond fan, so understood the importance of the tropes, of the gags that everybody is used to, and he has put his own particular spin on them, which is more than I could ever hope for.
For a long time, I've been a big fan of Cary since I saw his work for the first time, and he was one of the directors I had in my wish list. So when he reached out to be in the movie, I was obviously very excited, and I thought he was very talented. And then once we started working together, obviously I experienced how intuitive and how collaborative he is.
Cary brings a lot of youthful energy. There's a lot of dynamism to the way he shoots every scene. There's a lot of movement. Nothing's ever slow or static. And also, he's got a very strong, his cinematography background certainly means he has a very strong graphic, visual sense. And, he's very meticulous about the way he likes his sets prepared and dressed and lit. So when you see it all come together, you realize quite how he's really a maestro at tying all these things together. But, not being too fussed about it either. He really brings a lot of unique details and is always constantly making everything better, always improving, always tweaking, always willing to find something that's better than it was before. So it's been great to see how he brings it all together.
The thing with Cary is he's a super visual director, so he's very visually astute. He has an enormous encyclopedic knowledge of various things, including architecture and art, other films and so on. But he doesn't actually, unlike some other directors, give you a very specific, detailed brief. He likes to just let you bring some things to the table.
I think actually Cary Fukunaga is very adept at sort of adjusting and rethinking and accommodating and questioning, actually, on the go, questioning which I think is good, questioning the script. Should this be better? Should that line change? So there's a fluidity in the process on this film.
It's been a very, very interesting experience working with Cary. He seems wildly creative, and it was such a pleasure acting for him, because I felt from the crab anecdote a connection. He saw my work in a way, and I felt very safe and comfortable with exploring that. And I think that he was appreciating it. That's the feeling I get anyway. So from that zone of comfort or creatively being inspired for quite brief moments, because the scenes are usually more about running or shooting or hiding or jumping or falling. It was very much fun, and I think he saw Valdo as also a creative projection of his own creativity that he could. So we would invent stuff, Not everything will end up in the film, of course, but I've had a good time in front of camera.
It was an experience to work with Cary. I think this movie will really be different than the others because he's bringing a new angle, something like a young feel to it.
I think Cary is one of the most, innovative directors or exciting directors of the time right now. And why would you not want to work with the elite? And man, I admire Cary so much. I think he gives all his heart and soul in his work, and you want to surround yourself around people like that.
The film has a wonderful tone to it, not only a cinematographic tone, but Cary is, as expected, as a new director to the series, I think, taking it up, taking it up a notch in terms of in terms of the scope of the filmmaking, but also in terms of the intimacy, marrying those two things together in a way that is kind of stylized in a contemporary way. It's it's not an easy task, but I think, as it turns out, for the present, for the here and now, he was the right call and the right man for the job. So it's been really a pleasure to watch him work. Again, a lot of expectations, a lot of balls to keep juggling as he works through this. But he's done it like water off a duck's back.
Well, I'm just always in awe of the directors of these things, just because the sheer amount of decisions that they have to make every single day. Just to get out of the car in the morning feels like an act of great moral fortitude. And obviously with Cary writing this one as well, co-writing it, that he's constantly processing so much information, not only in terms of how this film is looking and how the scenes are working with the characters, but how that scene is going to lead into the next scene, and how he can maybe adapt that next scene to further on the story. It's kind of hypnotic just to see the way that they juggle so many plates throughout these films.
I was really fortunate. Barbara and Michael allowed me to get involved from the very beginning on the creative process of these movies. That I said to them, if I could be involved, if I could have a say, if I could take part in the making of the movie, then I could stand up and pretend to be James Bond. And they, were very generous and allowed me a voice.
I think the producers do a really good job at ensuring that they're reflecting the world that we're in right now. Every single time I see a Bond movie, I think, oh, that reminds me of something that's happened in the news, or reminds me of something that happened in this country, which is scary, but also it really, it made me trust my producers even more so, because it reminds me that they have their finger on the pulse at all times.
They're very, very smart producers, and they care not only about the actors and everyone involved in the movie, but also about all the changes that are happening in culture and the industry, and they understand the importance of that change and contributing to that change, and I think they're doing it.
Well, they're just lovely, and I don't know, I just feel so sort of lucky and thrilled to be a part of this thing. Still I feel that. And it's so interesting because I think people ask me what it's like to be involved in a Bond film, and I think people feel like it must be this enormous machine, and then of course it is enormous. And enormous numbers of people are involved in making it, but it always feels small and close-knit and like a family, and that you're cared for, and they're interested in what you have to offer, that's so special, really.
I've done the last 5 with Michael and Barbara, and you become like family. You spend 12, 15 months together, and more so than working with any other producers or working for any other franchise, you genuinely want to achieve the best you can, because every time you see each other in the morning, or you're saying goodnight on wrap, you just get to know each other so well, and you know when people are happy, you know when people are disappointed, or you know when people are stressed, and there is a lot of that. It's such an intense period shooting a Bond film that you become like family and you're looked after like family. You know, Barbara walked around and just check on all departments, you know, walk around having a cup of tea, how you doing? Not just talking about how you're doing at work or how you're doing, you know, that day, you know, generally checking in, see how you're all doing, because it is so intense. Same for Michael. Michael has been great because Michael just, he'll very, very quietly just walk his way through set. He'll watch what's going on and he'll see people he'll see a department under pressure and he'll come up and he'll give you a nod and give you a well done or check you're all right, and that means the world to the crew, to be honest, and that's why everybody loves working for them.
They really do lead from the front, and the way that they go about their business has an enormous sort of trickle-down effect, and the way that they go about their business is with thoroughness, with kindness, with a sense of taking the right things seriously and the right things not seriously. And I think they create a sort of cradle for everyone to work in. They trust their directors and they let them pursue their vision. They trust their writers, they trust their designers. But at the same time, if things are going out of shape, they're very quick to help people to get it back on track again. Every film, you know, the fact that they've been doing it for so long and they've still got the appetite and enthusiasm and rigour to be as precise as they are each time is again humbling.
I just can't say it enough that Michael and Barbara are just, you know, we feel so safe and so supported because they really know what they're doing. You know, it's very rare that you get producers who are that familiar with. Very rare. It's impossible. There is nobody else in this world who has lived the material in one way or the other the way they have. Mm-hmm. And so you don't even need to ask the question. You just need to look over your shoulder and see how they're reacting to a certain bit to know if you're on the right track or if you need to go and steer it a bit in a certain direction.
Working for Barbara, Michael and Gregg, it's such a bliss. I mean, it's really, I think they are, the way they are with their crew as a producer is very unique. Also Barbara and Michael, with all this bond they have behind them, all this experience, all these stories. I mean, it's amazing to talk with Michael or Barbara about what happened on this film, what happened on that Bond, and all these stories they know, all that experience they have. And they are so respectful of all the crew, and I mean, always ready to help someone or make his life easier, because they know how hard is the job.
I think Pierce Brosnan was Bond when the first time I kind of came into it. And I know this is incredibly nerdy, but I kind of grew up playing video games, so GoldenEye was the big game, and that kind of brought me to the films. And yeah, I mean, just that sound is so different from anything else that anybody really does in film, especially nowadays. And even when we were recording cues with the brass yesterday, it's like the second you hear those kind of sounds, you instantly know it's a Bond film.
You know, every time you step into a set, the more real it is, the better for the actor. You feel like you're walking into that place and you just forget about everything, and everywhere you look, it's gonna help you to feel in the moment. And like I said, it was incredible and outstanding how detailed and how real and accurate they went, and all the research they must have done, and all the things they must have brought maybe from there, because I was looking around and everything was there.
First time how it happened was Hans called me and he said, right, James Bond, do you fancy doing it? So I said, well, what took you so long? And because to me, I associate it with the guitar, I now since know from working with Steve that, believe it or not, that brass, I wasn't quite as aware of just what a big part of the soundscape that the brass was, but so I was like, well, I'm thinking, well, it's a guitar featured thing, so I was obviously very flattered, felt very privileged to do it and honoured. I thought, well, yeah, I think I can do that with a certain sound. What's you have to pay tribute and be appropriate to the original thing, but without pastiching it too much.
The sets, I mean, the circumstances are everything. Valdo in IKEA would be a different Valdo, you know. This is the so that's what I act from. That is what brings my inspiration or my intuition gets it going. So, and I still get completely, you know, in awe when I go up to the Cuba streets and see what they've done with that, or entire Spectre events, or Porton Down. I mean, the work that they put into it. It's humbling in a way. All of that is not for me, I get it, but all of that work they put into it, it's so monumental.
But as a musician, it's been great. I mean, it's a dream job as a guitar player, and as a British guitar player, I think it's a dream job, and you know, and it's a real honour. But just as a musician, anyway, I always really love working with Steve and Hans because I get to find out stuff that I wouldn't normally find out.
Well, the locations and, you know, the sets are other characters in the movie, and they're really powerful characters, and because they set the tone for everything. You know, film is ultimately a visual medium, so we need these fantastic sets to set the scene for us. And Mark Tildesley is just, you know, one of the best in the world. He's absolutely brilliant, and he's done, again, a fantastic job on this movie.
I remember there was a certain point when Hans came in and said to me that I was paying slightly too much respect to the chord changes he'd written, and he wanted me to be free to, which was a very generous thing and very helpful, because he wanted me to be a bit more be myself a little more. And if maybe, you know, I can answer the question for these guys, I think that's what happened with both Hans and Steve, in that they were very respectful to what James Bond is historically and the legacy and all of that, and the other thing, which is a real skill about being appropriate to the film, you know, that first and foremost, but at the same time being themselves as well. You have to be you can't be so respectful that you can't have your own voice.
We always prefer to use local support and labor, and when we can, and for the construction that we've been doing here, yeah, that's the way we've been doing it. Steve Bone is great about coming and getting in touch with all the people that know how to do this kind of work, and they've been incredible. I mean, some of these sets they've created in a pretty short period of time are absolutely stunning. Besides Bond's house, we also created a nightclub, which was a lot of fun. And in that set we had about 150 local extras, which all looked totally amazing. And so it's been really just a wonderful experience working with the local Jamaican people here and the Jamaican crews.
It's a constantly evolving process. And actually the constantly evolving process is to look at the character and go, oh, hang on a second, you know, he's moving a bit like this. It's lit differently. This is, you know, oh, look at this. The DP is doing something really interesting with the light. So that calls for certain colours in the orchestra, or that calls for certain bits of electronica, or whatever it is. You know, it's, and then, of course, we push it until somebody tells us to stop.
I think people is going to be blown away by the Cuban sets. I am Cuban and I know exactly how Cuba looks like, and I think it's very hard to recreate a country like this where there's this decadent aspect of it, but at the same time so much color and it's so rich, and the pass of time through the city and the people and the, you know, texture, and even even the weather. It's like you can feel it on the screen. And when I stepped into those sets, I was, you know, blown away by it.
For me, coming to it from outside, from rock music almost, there's bits that simply sometimes you expect something to be really loud, and you discover that it's much more effective when it's really quiet. And silences and things like that, these are all things that I'm starting to notice more and more the more I've worked on these films. And it's just not doing the obvious.
Wanting to show Bond kind of where he would come back to a sort of a spiritual home for himself. And in many ways, you know, it feels really iconic seeing Bond in this environment. There is, in many ways, the things that we've shot here, in particular Bond's house, sort of feels like there's something very classic and iconic about it. Reminds me, you know, seeing him with a spear gun, seeing the very graphic nature of those shutters and the silhouettes, and even some of the club stuff feels very much like, you know, we're back in Dr. No territory. And in a way, yeah, I think we always felt this would be, you know, the perfect fit, and now we had it for our story, where in a way we wanted to see Bond relax. This is where he's most comfortable. In a way, he's sort of left behind the stresses of the job back in England, and he's made a nice home for himself here.
But a couple of times when in meetings and when we've been going through bits of music, and Daniel Craig's name's come up about how he feel about music. It's become quite evident early on just how much he cares about
Yes.
the work. And in my limited experience, that's I'm sure all actors do, but leading actors do. But it's evident to everybody on the team that he really is into every aspect of it, and the music's very, very important, and he's super invested in that side of it, and that's kind of helped the atmosphere, I think, and it's added a sort of just another dimension to it, I think.
Trying to find things that are sort of extraordinary, you know, new inventions, new ideas, extraordinary places, but that world has a sort of simplicity that has a slight theatre in it, opera and theatre, than like a sort of classic standard film. Yeah? So we're looking for a bit of scale. As I say, we're all looking for this idea of glamour. And this is a good example to come to Jamaica because it does the glamour for us, you know, in a strange way. It really, as soon as you see Bond on the pontoon, you do kick back to some of the Sean Connery films and pieces. You know, you think, wow, that's super cool Bond. And there's something about this place that's just, you know, because it's, as you say, it's the spiritual home of Bond. It's the place where Fleming lived and wrote the books, you know. So, and we've been here a couple of times before with Bond, and so it's sort of always played well. So it felt appropriate in terms of the spiritual home, in terms of a glamorous place, to come back here, yeah, and you know, do it justice for the 25th anniversary version of Bond.
You just look at what's on screen, and you get so much from the actors on screen that it kind of, in a funny way, with all the material that's been written in all the past films, it ends up slightly writing itself, and then you tinker with it until you've broken it a little bit and made it kind of your own, you know, before it becomes something new and something exciting, but still feels like it's in that world.
Barbara mentioned early on the idea of going back to Jamaica for this story. I don't want to out her age to anyone publicly, but I guess I will by saying this. She was a baby when they were making Dr. No, a 1-year-old baby. So I think she's very much tied not only to the first Bond film, but I think for her, you know, being there as a child, where Bond as a character was created by Fleming. GoldenEye was a short drive away from where we shot this sequence in Port Antonio. So that meant a lot to her, I think, to especially if this is going to be Daniel's last outing, to go somewhere like that has such, I think, meaning for the character. And in this case, it's kind of where Bond has gone to retire. So in some ways, he started there, and what we're saying was his plan was to end there until the dangers of the world draw him back out again.
The job of certainly the guitar in the music is often, certainly when there's action, no doubt about that, when Bond is about to go into Bond mode, you know, whether it's a car chase or heroic, I think. Yeah. I have that association, like when he's about to be heroic, suddenly you hear the guitar, which is great, I can do that, but this will be fun. But there's also intrigue as well, I think, which was one of the things that is come from the old John Barry legacy.
The photography is really, it's just gorgeous. There's a warmth to it, but also there's a vivid quality that that's arresting, and there's an expectation from audiences that we're not going to retrace old steps with this, and I think in terms of the cinematography, it really is pushing the envelope, I think. I'm always amazed with cinematographers, the ways in which they're able to harness the technology and push it a little bit further with each chapter. And Linus is just, he's a bit of a maestro with all of this. Also, we're not shooting on, this isn't digital, we're shooting on film. So the tones and the warmth that that brings to the screen, it just, at least to this point, it can't be matched.
For me, it was really easy because I went, if there is one genre of movies that Johnny Marr was born for to play, it's this one. I said, just be yourself.
Yeah, it's been very lucky. I mean, the other thing as well, getting too corny about it, everyone's friends, everyone's working at a high level of ambition, and a lot's expected of everybody.
Hang on,
what I see though is that everybody's kind of mates.
Yeah, this has been really fun and exciting to be shooting another iconic car chase, and especially with the Aston Martin DB5. Aston was extremely generous in being able to help us make 8 vehicles, which all had to be modified in different ways. We had to have pod versions, we had to have versions that were reinforced for the high-speed driving. Some were just gadget cars that had all of Corbold's bells and whistles. So it was really fun to see all of that brought into play and see the amazing choreography that the stunt team has done with Lee and his whole team for the entire journey of it.
That we had it, that when they play me Billy's song, I was just, relieved. You're always relieved that it's that it's brilliant, that it was, but also that we had it, that we had something that matched the film and the tone of the movie. She hadn't got much information, I don't think. I think she'd been given a sort of outline of what we were doing, but she went away and nailed it.
One of the first things was being given this file of a Billie Eilish song that she and her brother Fiennes had done, and it was just a demo. And instantly going, I don't want to hear anything else. This is it. And there was a bit of, but there are all these other people who've written, songs. And I said, I don't want to hear anything else. This feels like the story to me, even though they don't know the story. This feels like the story to me, and it feels relevant, and it feels like a young person with an amazingly old heart at the same time. So it traveled across time for me.
Suttirat is, she very much focused on the fact that we're in a Bond movie. We need to make iconic looks, do you know what I mean? She knows how to make an iconic look. She knows how to create an ensemble that will make you feel like when you look back in 10 years, that was definitely of the year, but it was definitely of the character. So everything's current, but also very shaped to who you're creating. What I'm wearing right now is all 100% created by her brain. Every single last bit of material, everything that was sewn, it was all from her brain. Nothing was, bar the shoes, nothing was shop bought. Everything was literally laid out and sewn, handcrafted. And I think that she really enjoys playing and manipulating materials to accentuate parts of your body and to also make it feel like you're not doing anything for show. So none of this is fashion, it just happens to look good.
This place, George Martin, we're at Air Studios. George Martin gave me my very first paying job. I've done 100-something movies maybe here. This is so home from home that I was actually here when they were constructing it, so I can tell you what's in the walls. And it feels really important that what we do, this thing, when we mix electronics, where we mix rock and roll, where we mix orchestra, where we live by the edicts that Duke Ellington gave all of us. There are only two types of music, good music and bad music, and that we keep orchestras alive and we keep places like this going, and a movie like this lets you do this. I mean, right now you have probably the world's most extraordinary brass players sitting down there, making a racket. It's pretty extraordinary.
Unlike Naomie, who I had just said can't really be running around in heels doing her tactical moves, Anna, on the other hand, as Paloma, does run around in heels doing her tactical moves. And I would argue that that is precisely because she is going in as a party guest. She can't be going into that event dressed in tactical gear. So the surprise of her being able to conduct all these crazy stunts in what seems like a diaphanous dress is like the strength of that costume and that character, I think.
The images and the sound are one, and they create an experience that you haven't had before. And that we, the music, are like opening doors and inviting you in to have an experience and to feel something. We're not going to tell you what it is, and we're not going to tell you what to feel, but just to have the possibility of having an experience. I think that's pretty cool.
Because the tux is probably the most iconic of the James Bond wardrobe looks. Again, I revisited what each Bond had worn in the form of evening wear in all the films prior to this, and then specifically paid special attention to what Daniel had worn in terms of evening wear in the previous films he had done. So we knew we wouldn't want to repeat something that was just done in the last film, and we wouldn't really necessarily want to repeat any of the other ones. I mean, as his fifth venture into this, I feel like one of the other responsibilities you have weight on your shoulders as a designer for Bond is that you need to move him forward. You need to sort of take the essence of what's come before and move it forward for the next iteration.
Their creative vision and the way they work together, because I think that is key. Costume and production design, they're not two separate elements. They're all on screen together. And Suttirat, brought so much knowledge and expertise with her team, but also just sort of tireless passion, trying to find the right clothing for characters we've seen many times before, but still make that little difference in there. But also for the new characters and the sort of the larger masses of soldiers and bad guys and villains, to give them a look that felt fresh and new.
It's wonderful working with Suttirat. I absolutely love and adore Suttirat because she's such a gentle person, and she's so collaborative and caring, and she just wants to make us as actors happy and help us on this journey to find our characters.
Our wardrobe designer and Cary and I went through this phase of discussing what we wanted her to look like. We tried lots of suits and pants and jumpers and all of these things to make it more practical, because I have obviously a lot of action and we wanted to be comfortable and covered and all the right things in the right places and all of that. But it was there was still something missing, and then at some point we came across this beautiful navy dress that we obviously tried and rehearsed all the action, and it was good for it.
She was so responsive and open to all feedback, and willing to go on this kind of journey no matter how long it took for us to feel comfortable.
Oh my gosh, I love Suttirat. She has some of the best costumes, or brought some of the best costumes out here, and I have not been put in any of them. I wear just a plain white shirt all the time. Of course, my guy is like the most bland person, not wearing anything cool, but I understand why. I mean, it's James Bond. I didn't even get to wear a tux, like, son of a bee. But she does a great job.
Thank God I had like an amazing stunts team that you can't get better than that. It was the best people you can work with, and they were very patient. and they give me all the tools and the confidence to actually believe I could do it in such a short time.
I think for us on a Bond, it's a real fine line, even going back to when we did Casino Royale with Daniel. Daniel performed so much of his own stunts on that film and worked so hard and took the knocks along the way, along with us as a stunt department. You know, working under Gary Powell, who was coordinating at the time, and working with Martin Campbell, that's kind of set the standard for these Bond films for Daniel, where you know that there's a high risk because it is, you're going to do it for real, although we'll break it down and we'll prep it as safely and as smartly as possible. End of the day, someone, when they call action, that's a real person jumping off of the cranes or crashing the car or jumping the motorcycle or driving the boat. And in Daniel as well, being at number ones with Daniel when he's running across the top of the cranes, when he's in the boat or he's in the car, it's all happening for real, which is far more rewarding as a stunt coordinator and a stuntman rather than working in an environment which is just a green screen environment where you're working just, on a mocap suit, or you're trying to interact with things that aren't real. You are interacting with a real car. A real truck is coming towards you. A real boat is speeding beside you. Guys are flying past you. It just brings it's happening for real. Those stunts are really happening, and you're right in the middle of it.
I think what helped me for the auditions and for the rehearsals with the stunt guys is the fact I come from the Thai boxing, so I have experience in fighting, but it gives you the attitude, only the attitude, because you have to understand really quick you're fighting, but really for fake with a big gap of safety. So I had to improve that, to understand really quickly, okay, I have to be aggressive, really rough, but there is a safety things you can't put on the side.
I was completely unprepared, and that was the way to do it, because so was Valdo. Yes, the stunt people are very professional and they're very helpful, and they pad me up and they explain this, and yes, we did some stunt appraisal, but I think the beauty of it is that I have no clue in many ways on how to come from A to B. So the preparation was to be flexible and to be open and very much act under the circumstances.
Way back when Sean Connery first appeared in Bond movies, there was no such thing as a blockbuster. There were big movies, but there was no such thing as the sort of action-adventure movies. That there were kind of war movies, there were, things that, there were big set-piece movies. There was nothing quite like that, and they sort of set a tone for cinema since then, and they've been an event. Every time one's come out, there's been a song, there's been fashion, there's been politics, there's been all of the things that go along with a Bond movie, and I think probably Fleming's novels put them on their way, but I think it's the way they've been produced over the years by Cubby and then afterwards by Michael and Barbara that have kept them an exciting thing to look forward to for families and everybody.
Something that's really interesting to me is that obviously the world in many ways has changed. Obviously it's changed enormously since the first Bond films, but even since the last Bond film, even since Spectre, the world has changed. And in extraordinary ways, and to do with gender, and to do with sexual politics, and to do with technology, and to do with politics in general, and world events. And so I think there's a real intrigue about how you're going to make this relevant now. How do you move with the times? How do you reflect the times? How do you keep riding that wave, so that it doesn't become something outdated, outmoded. I think that's what people are intrigued about, and I am too. I think it has to evolve in order to stay relevant.
And there's a great sort of history of design and of ideas that the Bond has been quite imaginative in many ways and groundbreaking in some ways with its ideas and its scale and its colour and its things. So it was a real honour to be given the job.
I think a lot of it is to do with the way that Michael and Barbara and Gregg keep pushing themselves, and the way that the creative teams know that there's a body of work upon which people have a great fondness for, but how to keep pushing that forward, how to keep changing it without crushing everyone's expectations. I guess to a certain extent there's a degree of comfort in something still existing for that amount of time. Some part of the old world or your youth that is still going on and is still as vivid and as exciting as you remember it when you were 6 or 7 when you were first watching them. And I guess there's cars, there's locations, there's stunts, there's all the fun stuff, there's one-liners, there's always a wit, there's a charm, as well as a heart and a kind of dynamism to them all. I mean, how much more do you want?
That's the beauty of Bond films, isn't it? For all of us, growing up as kids, watching them, even watching your parents watch them, and seeing some amazing action sequence, and knowing there's been a real person do it. For me, being in the industry 20 years and working and growing up with the world of CGI, and then working as a practical stuntman, and there's no bigger challenge or no bigger kudos to being on a Bond film and doing a stunt for real, because you've seen iconic stunts. Bond has always set the standard for all action films for the last 50 years. So to be part of that and actually go into a Bond, prepping, designing, coordinating anything, you've got to have a real person that's got to perform that stunt, which is a huge difference to working with a more animated, superhero kind of character. Bond's a real man, although he's extraordinary and he's got, determination and he's got superior skill. He's just he's a man at the end of the day.
I think what we all succeed to do on this film, on No Time to Die, was to come back also to what makes Bond, meaning, big set, big action scene, amazing, costume and different location, spectacular cars and all the gadget, and that's one part of the things. I was talking recently about Linus, the DOP, which done an amazing job on the light. Seriously, it's like, wow, you bring me back to that time of the spectacular film.
It's a franchise that comes with such weight in the world of cinema and in the world of the audiences and in the world of media. It's of a certain significance that many other films don't have, or franchises for that matter. So it means a lot, for me at least, to have been a part of that franchise.
I was on set and we were shooting at Pinewood on my last night. It was the middle of the night, it was raining, it was cold, and I thought everybody was just going to want to go home, and so it was a quick goodbye. And all of the cast, all of the crew, everybody out of the offices came down to set to say goodbye, and it was very emotional. I had to make a speech, and I'm not very good at making speeches. I don't like it very much, but I just started saying and tried to kind of keep it together. But it was difficult because it just felt very emotional.